Hello YouTubers, this is Brian again from Van and Solar Adventures, and it's in the morning and I'm in a subdivision with trees, so I usually only get full sun from about 10 till 5 or so. But this video, I wanted to post another video about the Kodiak, Energy Kodiak lithium generator, solar generator. I post a lot of videos about what I like about the Kodiak. There's a lot of things I like about it. You know, it's the lightest one on the market. It's the only one with a 30 amp plug for an RV. It's got super high output capacity. I still absolutely love it, but I did want to mention, I want to be honest in all my videos. One thing I do not like about it, I have finally done a professional electrical installation to get maximum solar benefit out of my system. I'm still thinking about ways to do a professional solar panel installation. I mounted one on my shed, but anyways, I'm still thinking about that. But anyways, the problem with the Kodiak in a fixed solar installation is that the inverter on the Kodiak is so powerful. If you watch a previous video, it says the total output, but the inverter is so powerful with no load whatsoever. It's using around 10 watts. Now, I just started it up and it's warmed up now. Normally, ongoing inverter is about 15 watts. At the end of this video, if it goes up, I'll show that. But right now, there's no load on it. I'll just prove that in case people think that there is a load. I might string another clip because normal warm running ongoing is about 15 watts. Anyways, my point is that with no load on it whatsoever, it uses an average of 15 watts. Right now I'm only showing 10, but that's at startup. But anyways, so if you multiply that by each hour of the day and all night, you're wasting all that power if you leave the inverter on. Now, in a fixed installation, I want to be able to leave it on and keep that plugged in. And then I've got these plugs, and then that goes to my house. And I've got an inverted. I got a plug in my house that I can draw power. And so in a fixed installation, I need to leave this on all the time, so I don't have to keep running back out in the shed to turn this thing on all the time. So that would be silly. So now, why am I picking on the Kodiak for that issue in a fixed installation? Well, here's my goal zero. Now, it doesn't have quite as powerful of an inverter, so it's not fair to pick on Kodiak for this issue, but it has a fairly powerful inverter, and this is the morning, and it's basically still full, and I've left the inverter on the Goal Zero Yeti 1250. I've left it on continuously for over a week or so, and it's bringing in 24 watts. So really that's hardly enough. Oh, it dropped down to 2. So basically what I'm saying is that the inverter does not use a lot of power when left on all the time, whereas this thing uses a lot of power if you leave the inverter on all the time. So what does that mean? That means the Goal Zero Yetis are good to use in a fixed place installation where you want to leave the inverter on all the time because it wastes a small amount of power. Whereas the Kodiak, if you leave it on all the time, it wastes a lot of power, and so it's not, in my opinion, good in a fixed solar input situation. Now, if you're willing to turn it off and on a couple times a day when you need to use it, then yes, it's good in a fixed solar based installation. But if you're not willing to do that, like in my situation, I don't want to have to keep running out to the shed to turn this off and on every day. It's not so good of a situation. What I'm going to do, so this video is not too long, is I'm going to cut this off now. I'm going to leave this inverter on And I'm going to maybe string together another clip in the morning. I'm going to use no power from this inverter today. None at all. I'll just go ahead and leave it unplugged, but I will leave the inverter on, and I'll leave 150 watts of solar coming into it. And you'll see tomorrow morning, right now, this reading is showing that it's fully charged. Okay? All these bars are full. In the morning, what happened to me the other day is it was about half down, half charged, because the inverter was on and it used all this power through the night. So anyways, I will purposely pause this video and string together another clip in the morning after leaving this on for a day. One more thing I wanted to point out real quick. The cool thing about the Yeti 1250 is the inverter is on, and look at the output. I'm using 0 watts of power. Now, in reality, I know with the inverter on, it's got to be using some power, but it's not enough to even register. So either it's either got a very, very efficient inverter in the Yeti, or maybe that reading's not quite right. Now, what's interesting about that is here's my Yeti 400. It's got no load on it, but the inverter is on, but there's no load. And look at that, it's using 4 watts. So the Yeti 1250 is actually more efficient inverter than the Yeti 400. The Yeti 400 is still using 4 watts when the inverter's on, and with no power being drawn, and it's got a less powerful inverter. So, all right, that's it for now. All right, YouTubers, this is day 2 of my Energy Kodiak test. Now, as I promised yesterday, I would leave the Energy Kodiak inverter on all day and evening with 150 watts going into it. And because the inverter is so powerful, it uses... Now, what was weird about this is it's only using about 10, 11 watts. When I had it in my house, it was averaging a use of 15 watts. I think it's because it's colder out here in the shed, and maybe when it's running colder, it's more efficient. Maybe with heat, there's loss. Anyways, I swear, you know, inside the house, it used around 15 watts with no load, and about 10, 11 watts out here with no load. All right, so what happened? So basically, if you use an average of 10 or 11 watts an hour times 10 hours, first of all, it did get sun yesterday, so it remained fully charged when the sun was out. When the sun went away at whatever 6:30 p.m., then it's getting no solar input. So if you waste 10 or 11 watts per hour, 10 times 10 is 100 watts. It was more like 15 hours, so about 150 watts were wasted. So you can't quite tell it, but it says 12.06 volts. Normally it gets to about 12.66 or 12.7 volts full charge. So even though it's got a full line of charge, actually I can show you this. If I unhook the solar, well, I guess it won't show it, but basically that last little blip there is still filling up, because that would normally be you know, and the last part of it would slowly charge anyways, but 12.7. So basically about 10 to 15% of the battery is wasted. Now look over here, and by the way, I used no power on it all evening. Nothing was plugged in, etc. Now here's my Yeti 1250. Now what's interesting, same scenario, I have 150 watts going into it. And however, I did have something plugged in. I was using the power last night, and as far as I knew, I had it probably using about 200 watts for roughly 2 hours. But anyways, this morning it's still basically full charge. I've got no solar input right now. There's no sun hitting the panels. And part of the reason why this is still basically full is because the inverter doesn't use hardly any power at all when it's turned on. So it did not waste 150 watts like this unit wasted 150 watts by simply leaving it on when there's no solar input coming into it. Now also, just in full disclosure, I do have another 100 amp battery chained to the Yeti 1250 that helps keep that full. But it's a similar type situation. Basically, the point is if you have a fixed base solar installation, the Yeti 1250 is better because it wastes a lot less power. There's my Yeti 400 if you're curious. It's getting a little bit of power going into it, and I have 154 watts going out right now. Actually, I must have turned on something in the house that's using that power, but it's still basically still full as well, and I used that power last night as well. So even though it said it used basically 5 watts, it's a lot less than 10 to 15 watts that the Energy uses. But again, I'm not picking on the Energy Kodiak because it has a lot more output capability. It's got an RV 30 amp plug. I can power my entire RV, and it's a lot lighter. So it's got a lot of other benefits that still make it worthwhile. But if you're choosing this for a fixed installation and you want to leave the inverter on all the time, note that you're going to waste 10 to 20% of the battery each day. If you're in a position where you can turn it off when you're done using it and turn it back on when you are using it, then in a mobile type application or where you're next to it, then that is a better application. Anyways, let me know if you have any questions, but there's another quick comment about the Energy Kodiak, probably disadvantages. Okay, thanks.